So we had a fairly significant court development yesterday in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is that immigrant who was wrongly deported to El Salvador and specifically to Bukele's torture dungeon in El Salvador. There, of course, was a question very early on with regard to how all of this went down in the Alien Enemies Act, where the planes were in the air and a judge, Judge Boasberg, said, you have to turn them around, you cannot do this, and the administration went ahead and flew those planes anyway. So yesterday, let's put this up on the screen, Judge Boasberg found probable cause to hold the administration in contempt of court for defying his order to turn around those planes. One of those planes had Abrego Garcia on it. I think 283 is the number of migrants that were on those 3 planes total. And he's demanding new details in order for officials to purge their contempt, meaning basically to rectify the situation. So this is different. They haven't been found in contempt yet, but this appears to be building in this direction if the administration continues to fail to comply. So joining us to talk about this development and this entire situation with El Salvador and Bukele and the Trump administration denying these migrants any sort of due process, we've got Richard Hanania. He is a political commentator. He is the author of a number of books, including The Origins of Woke, and also has his own Substack. Good to see you, Richard.
Good to see you, Richard.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, of course. So just give us your top line, like what you have thought about this whole situation, and especially the way the administration is insisting that even after they admitted that they made an error with regard to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, now they are absolutely refusing to do anything to correct that error. And Stephen Miller has gone so far as to even deny that it was an error at all in the first place.
Yeah, so there are these 2 cases proceeding on parallel tracks. There's the Abrego Garcia case, which is getting a lot of attention. There's also, don't forget, the Venezuelan case where they shipped off those hundreds of Venezuelans to El Salvador, the country that they weren't from. And that's the case where they are, there's probable cause to find them in contempt. So we're going to have a couple weeks here where the administration is going to come back. Either they're going to be able to say, we've answered your question satisfactorily, or there could be a kind of going forward with a criminal contempt charge. Yeah, the Abrego Garcia case, this one is even more frightening. I mean, both of them involved disobeying a court order, but this was the Supreme Court, and they went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said you have to facilitate his return. Now, the lower court had said you have to effectuate his return, and the Trump administration has gone and tried to read that very, very narrowly. Now, so facilitate maybe is not as extreme as effectuate. There's a reason the Supreme Court preferred one phrasing in that 9-0 decision over the other. But I think everyone agrees that they have to do something. They can't just sit there and do nothing. And the administration argues that they've tried to argue at the lower court level that basically if he shows up at a port of entry by himself, they'll let him in. Now, what's ridiculous about all this is they are kind of teasing the court system. I mean, there's a tweet that that the plane of Venezuelans left after the judge's order, and then Bukele tweets "oopsie," and I think Rubio retweets it. And then after right as this is going on, Bukele comes to the White House, and they're sitting there, and whatever facilitate means. He's sitting next to you. You can ask him in a serious way. You can try to do something. And they don't. They sit there. They giggle about it. Bukele says, what am I supposed to do? Smuggle him into the United States? Like, no, this is part of an agreement. The U.S. paid you. And now Senator Van Hollen from Maryland goes down to El Salvador, and he says that the vice president of the country tells him that basically, what are we supposed to do? Smuggle him in. And he says, no, Pam Bondi said that if you guys released him, you can go back. So they're playing this game. They are trying to interpret it very, very narrowly. What's frightening about this is they go back and now they just deny what the Supreme Court says. Now Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, when they're talking to the press, will say we won 9-0. I mean, it's just there's kind of not a connection to reality. So a lot of things are at stake here. There's the principle that the president cannot just take someone off the streets and send them to a third world labor camp. Mm-hmm. They're floating the idea now that they do it to U.S. citizens. We've seen people who are long-term permanent residents being picked off those streets because they've written the wrong op-ed or had the wrong ideas about U.S. policy towards Israel. And so, what's next? We have an administration that doesn't tell the truth, that will lie about basic things. They'll say a guy is a convicted MS-13 member when he's not. They'll say they won at the Supreme Court while they lost. They don't see citizenship as a bright line. They don't see any free speech respect for permanent residence. And so, yeah, I think this is probably the most important thing going on in politics right now, because the question is, what are the limits here, and what is going to be the pushback that stops them?
Right.
Richard, how does this fit? So let's put, let's say, C2 up there on the screen. This was a tweet from J.D. Vance that I saw you reacting to. This was somebody who was criticizing his initial defense of the Abrego Garcia deportation, who was Jesse Singal, saying, "I hate the smug, self-assured bullshit. I know I'm right, and people must be dumb or immoral to disagree with me. It's easy to go through life because when you think you've never have to seriously about why your worldview is justification for the mass invasion of the country my ancestors built with their bare hands." Now, I know you've criticized some of this type of rhetoric and others in the past, but break down some of your analytical frameworks about the Trump administration, low human capital, and how this all fits into that.
So JD is obviously not low human capital. He wrote a very well-regarded book on his life. He went to Yale Law School, a very selective institution. He's kind of a tragic figure at this point. He's obviously very smart, but he's part of a movement, and he has ambitions, and he became vice president because he's part of a movement that has the characteristics of a cult of personality at this point. And so JD, it's kind of fascinating to watch him. He usually doesn't just straight up lie, but he always begins his statements with a criticism of the media, somebody like Jesse Singal or the Biden administration, and a praise of Trump, and then kind of goes off in this direction where he's not directly answering the point. And I think that's what makes him a tragic figure. I think he's a smart person who wants to be respected by kind of the intelligentsia, people like us. But he's working for a man who, I mean, we've all seen it. We've seen kind of what Trump is at this point. It's been reported, and I've heard this from people firsthand, that when you go in to apply for a job at the administration, one of the first things they ask you is, do you think Trump won the 2020 election? And and that's been reported in the media, but I've heard it's actually worse than that, because they go and they say, how big do you think the victory was?
Oh my God.
There's really no answer you give other than all 50 states, because Trump is now saying he would have won all 50 states if it wasn't for vote fraud. And I've always been encouraging the media, when you have these people on these Sunday programs, Bessent and these people like this, ask them if Trump won California. They will not contradict him. There is no way they'll contradict him. Stephen Miller might say he won California. J.D. Vance might deflect and start blaming the media for asking a gotcha question. But these are the dynamics that we're dealing with. And it touches on everything. So this morning, Trump says Jerome Powell can't be fired quickly enough. And the people who know anything about the economy say, you think tariffs are bad for the stock market? Wait until we go after Fed independence. And from everything we've seen, there is just nobody in the room who will say anything other than yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. The movement has been purging everyone who has a spine or has a kind of personal integrity who will stand up to this man. And so this is why kind of the possibility space of the things that could happen, sorry to be so dark, but I think the last month or two have really been clarifying about what's at stake.
I agree.
No, I think that's fair.
I agree. Yeah. You tweeted something this morning. So you wrote a great piece that I thought was really insightful called "The Based Ritual," about the social dynamics within this movement. And these are not like random fringe people on the internet anymore. These are people that, as you point out, are staffing J.D. Vance. They're staffing Josh Hawley. They're increasingly in important, significant positions throughout the administration. And, about that based ritual direction and the way that everybody's just sort of competing to be increasingly, counter signaling how bad they are and how racist they are and how sexist they are, and no one wants to outdo or be outdone by the other people in the group. You tweeted, "It's funny that Trump isn't doing mass deportations, but he's got all of the MAGAs passionately defending the idea of having a few hundred people in a labor camp. It's all about vice signaling for them. Give them one or two random guys to torture, and MAGA is happy." Now, I would say I fully expect them to move on to mass deportations. The acting ICE director is talking about setting up Amazon Prime for human beings, and the new Republican budget would make ICE the, I think, best funded law enforcement agency in the history of the country, maybe of the world. So I'm not putting off the table that they're going in that direction next. But help us understand, what are these internal dynamics that lead to a situation where these people are cheering random, we don't even know who these guys are, but random people with no criminal record being locked up in a prison that is worse than what we reserve for serial killers here in the US.
Yeah, I mean, we thought that virtue signaling was bad when everyone tried to show how anti-racist and unsexist and nice they were. I don't think we really adequately considered kind of you can go in the opposite direction. And so there's this kind of thing where you talk to young conservatives or you're around them, and there is this, I call it the based ritual. So basically, they're trying to show that they are not politically correct, and this goes in the direction of kind of performative cruelty towards outsiders. I think we have a regime that kind of operates on that principle. It's loyalty to Trump. It's kind of performative cruelty. They would spin it as try to look out for the American worker or look out for the forgotten men and women or so forth. They have these justifications in their heads. But there's a kind of disturbing and clear tendency to downplay the rottenness of the Hitler regime or kind of fascist states, or to defend literally anything Trump does, or be completely indifferent to whether we're sending, like you said, people who are innocent, not convicted of anything, to these labor camps potentially indefinitely. We talk about Abrego Garcia. The administration has been trying to dig up stuff. He had some kind of a domestic violence dispute, but we forgot about the Venezuelans, including the gay makeup artist, who I have not seen anyone say anything as far as he's ever hurt anybody, he has any gang ties, he has any criminal record, nothing, just not even a single allegation. And I think that the understanding of why this happens, I think the movement, it rots from the head. It really is Donald Trump. If you have somebody who lies this much, if you have somebody who just demands loyalty above all else, who's not civil in public life, who kind of delights in cruelty too, I think that attracts a certain kind of person. It repulses a different kind of person. And I think that these two dynamics, the base ritual, so to speak, and the loyalty to Trump, I think together they're a frightening combination.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.